I walked into that dining room wearing borrowed shoes and a quiet smile, letting them believe I was small, grateful, harmless. His mother's eyes measured me. His father barely looked up. And my boyfriend squeezed my knee under the table, a warning I pretended not to feel. They thought this dinner was about judging me. They were wrong. It was about what I had chosen not to say. What I had hidden. What I was waiting for. Because by the end of that night, the truth I carried would crack their perfect world open. Before I continue, tell me your country and the time right now. Nothing that followed was accidental. I stepped into the mansion with my shoulders slightly hunched, my hands folded like I was afraid to touch anything. The marble floor echoed under my borrowed shoes, and the chandelier above felt like it was watching me. His mother smiled first, slow and sharp, the kind that pretends to welcome while already judging. His father barely looked up from his phone. I felt my boyfriend's hand guide me forward, proud and tense at the same time. I softened my voice on purpose. I thanked them too much. I admired the house like I had never seen wealth before. Inside, I was calm. This was not fear. This was preparation. The dining table was long and polished, set like a stage. I chose my seat carefully, waiting for direction, letting them feel important. His mother asked about my parents, tilting her head like she cared. I answered gently, vague enough to sound unimpressive. My father worked hard. My mother saved carefully. That was all I gave her. His father finally looked at me when he asked what I did. Not what I loved. Not what I dreamed. What I did. I smiled and said I managed things, part-time. I let the silence stretch. I watched his eyes decide I was nothing special. My boyfriend laughed too loudly, filling the gaps for me. He joked about how shy I was, how I hated attention. I let him. I noticed how fast he laughed when his mother raised an eyebrow, how quick he corrected me if my words sounded too confident. When his father mentioned money, just casually, like bait, I swallowed and spoke about budgeting. I talked about coupons. I said thrift stores taught me patience. I called myself lucky. Their shoulders relaxed. The room shifted. I felt it happen. They stopped watching me closely. I became safe. Small. Invisible. The first course arrived, and with it, their real voices. They spoke freely now, discussing vacations and investments, speaking over me instead of to me. I nodded at the right times. I laughed when expected. His mother made comments about how some girls only want comfort, how ambition can be dangerous if it isn't guided properly. I agreed softly. I felt my boyfriend's knee brush mine, not comfort, but control. I understood then that he liked me best this way. Quiet. Grateful. Easy to explain. Easy to shape. Then it happened. A careless sentence, dropped like it was harmless. His mother leaned back and said girls like me were good at supporting roles, not leading ones. She said it kindly. Everyone smiled. I lowered my eyes. I focused on my plate. But inside, something locked into place. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. This dinner was not about meeting me. It was about placing me. Assigning me a future without asking if I wanted it. I thought about how carefully I had chosen my dress, how plain I had made myself. I remembered why I never spoke about my education, my past, the life I built quietly. I had learned early that revealing too much too soon invites control. Tonight proved it. They were already planning. Talking about holidays I would attend, decisions I would follow. They spoke like I wasn't there. And I let them. I let them believe I was absorbing, not observing. My boyfriend squeezed my knee again when his mother asked if I wanted children. Soon. I smiled and said someday, if life allowed it. His father laughed and said life always allows it if you choose right. The table laughed with him. I felt the weight of expectation press down. I wondered if my boyfriend had ever defended anyone at this table. Or if he had only learned to survive it by agreeing. That question stayed with me, heavy and unanswered. As the plates cleared, I realized they had already written my role. Supportive. Silent. Replaceable. I saw the version of my future they imagined, small and contained. I felt no panic. Only resolve. If they wanted this version of me, I would let them have her. For now. There was power in being underestimated. There was freedom in invisibility, if you chose it. I folded my hands again and smiled when his mother reached for the wine. I thanked her for dinner like it was a gift, not a test. Inside, I made a decision. I would let them keep believing their version of me a little longer. Long enough to hear everything. Long enough to decide what came next. And as I lifted my glass, I knew this table had already changed me, even if they had no idea yet. As the first course arrived, steam rising from porcelain plates, I felt the room tighten around me. His mother smiled and asked if I found the portions overwhelming, her tone gentle, her eyes sharp. I laughed softly and said everything looked generous to me. I straightened my napkin, lowered my gaze, and made myself smaller. I thanked her twice. I let my shoulders curve inward. The more unsure I looked, the more confident she became. She began speaking slowly, like she was teaching, not asking, explaining how family traditions worked here. I noticed my boyfriend watching quietly, hands folded, waiting to see how easily I would accept this lesson without pushing back at all tonight. Her questions followed the same pattern, wrapped in concern, pointed in purpose. She asked about my plans, my goals, whether I felt intimidated by their lifestyle. I answered carefully, saying I was flexible, adaptable, happy to learn. I nodded more than I spoke. His father leaned back, amused, and talked about legacy like it was a shield. He said wealth needed protection. He said love was easier when boundaries were clear. I listened, chewing slowly, storing every sentence. My silence made them comfortable, and comfort made them careless with their beliefs. I could feel the evaluation ending, replaced by assumption and control. No one noticed my calm breathing or steady focus under the table light. My boyfriend stayed quiet beside me, his silence louder than their questions. He watched my face closely, like he was studying how much pressure I could take. When his mother paused, he jumped in with a joke, softening her words without correcting them. I realized he was trained for this. Observe. Adjust. Survive. He did not protect. He managed. And I was something to manage. That understanding settled heavy in my chest, slow and unwelcome. The pattern suddenly felt old, inherited, passed down like furniture. I wondered how many women had sat here before me. And how many learned to disappear quietly. The thought made my throat tighten without showing. I swallowed and smiled again. When his father joked about prenups, the table erupted in easy laughter. He said it was smart to know who you were marrying. He said love did not excuse risk. I laughed too, a soft sound that surprised even me. That laugh tasted bitter. It felt like I had agreed to something without signing my name. My boyfriend squeezed my hand under the table, pleased. I stared at my plate and nodded, letting the moment pass. Inside, something cracked, not loudly, but deep enough to feel. I realized my performance was costing me pieces of myself. Still, I stayed seated, calm, watching them grow bolder. They mistook my quiet for consent. And that scared me. Between bites, memory surfaced, sharp and grounding. I remembered the folder I left at home, untouched on my desk. I remembered emails unanswered and calls ignored. I remembered why silence once kept me safe. I focused on the weight of the fork, the taste of wine, anchoring myself. They believed they were evaluating me, measuring my worth. They did not know they were revealing theirs. Every comment became evidence. Every smile became instruction. I stored it all carefully, knowing truth works best when timed. The room felt smaller as their confidence filled it. My boyfriend never interrupted, never corrected, never questioned. That silence taught me everything. About him. About them. And about what was coming. His mother leaned closer then, lowering her voice like she was sharing wisdom. She spoke about protection, about guarding family resources from outsiders who did not understand responsibility. She said love required alignment. I smiled politely, heart steady, mind sharp. I felt my boyfriend relax beside me. He believed the danger had passed. He did not see the calculation forming behind my calm expression. I had played small before. I knew how this game ended. The more they talked, the clearer my next steps became. I answered gently, giving them nothing they could use yet. Inside, I counted breaths and moments, patient. Patience was my advantage tonight. They had no idea. Not yet. Not here. The conversation drifted, but the tension stayed alive under every word. I noticed how his mother watched my reactions now, reassessing. I noticed how his father avoided my eyes. Something had shifted, just slightly. My boyfriend remained unaware, confident in the role he thought I played. I stayed composed, answering softly, asking harmless questions. They answered eagerly, unaware they were giving me exactly what I needed. The night felt longer, heavier, full of unspoken consequences. I sensed the edge approaching, the point of no return. Still, I held my position, letting them feel superior. That illusion was fragile. And it was about to crack. All it needed was pressure. One careless sentence. From her mouth. She smiled again, too sweet, too confident, and spoke as if offering guidance. She said girls like me should be grateful to marry into stability, not ambition. She said some women were better supporters than leaders. The room went still. I felt my boyfriend nod beside me. Not subtly. Not accidentally. In agreement. My chest tightened as understanding hit. This was not just her belief. It was his too. I kept my face calm, but something inside me hardened. The line had been crossed, and he chose his side. I smiled slowly, letting them believe I accepted it. But I was already planning what came next. This dinner was far from over. Neither was I. I listened as her voice softened, pretending to protect me while shaping my limits. She said realism mattered. She said stability was safety. She said gratitude would keep me secure. Each sentence landed gently, yet sliced deep. I felt my boyfriend tense beside me, not in defense, but agreement. His shoulder relaxed. His breath slowed. That reaction shocked me more than her words. In that moment, clarity arrived without mercy. This dinner was not about approval. It was instruction. A warning disguised as care. I smiled politely while my chest tightened. I understood the rules forming around me, unspoken but firm. Sit smaller. Want less. Accept guidance. Be thankful. I realized they were not asking who I was. I decided to test the boundary gently, just enough to see their response. I said I believed growth mattered too. I said independence felt important to me. My tone stayed calm, respectful, almost apologetic. The air shifted immediately. His father's smile disappeared. His mother straightened, eyes sharp with warning. The room tightened like a held breath. My boyfriend squeezed my knee harder this time. It was not comfort. It was correction. Stop. I nodded quickly and apologized, even though I had crossed nothing real. Inside, something broke cleanly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. I felt the fracture settle. I knew I would never unsee this moment again. The realization burned slowly, leaving certainty where hope once lived inside. Dessert arrived with forced smiles and silver spoons, pretending sweetness could soften truth. They spoke over me now, confident I was contained. They planned holidays, schedules, children, roles. They designed a future out loud where I followed instructions and waited patiently. I listened quietly, hands folded, pulse steady. Each plan erased me further. Smaller. Dependent. Replaceable. My boyfriend joined easily, adding details, shaping expectations without looking my way. That absence hurt more than insults. I felt invisible, yet painfully aware. I thought about my education, my assets, the years I built alone. I remembered why I hid my past. Silence had protected me. Tonight, it exposed them completely. The contrast settled heavy in my chest, undeniable, final truthfully. I studied my boyfriend's face while they spoke, searching for doubt. I found none. He looked comfortable, relieved, like order had been restored. That realization scared me. I wondered when loving me became managing me. I wondered if he ever wanted an equal partner, or just a quieter mirror. My chest ached with questions I had avoided asking. I remembered moments I had softened myself for him. Moments he praised my humility. I saw them differently now. The pattern was clear. This family rewarded compliance. They punished independence. And he fit perfectly inside that system, benefiting without challenging it, watching to see how far I would bend. The thought hollowed me, replacing affection with caution and resolve tonight. As conversation drifted, his mother spoke again, slower, confident she had settled me. She said I would learn quickly. She said family would guide my choices. I nodded softly, lips curved, eyes lowered. Inside, I stayed alert. I noticed how easily authority lived in her tone. I noticed how my boyfriend relaxed, satisfied. He believed the tension had passed. He believed I accepted the role offered. He did not see the calculation forming behind my calm expression. I had played small before. I knew how dangerous comfort could be. I understood patience as strategy, not surrender. Tonight required timing. Every smile became armor, every silence a tool I controlled deliberately. I waited, steady, prepared, watching carefully for impact. I thought about the truth resting far from this table. My education. My work. My assets. The years I survived without permission. I remembered the documents I left untouched at home. The calls I did not return. I remembered why secrecy once saved me. They believed they were shaping my future. They did not know I was documenting theirs. Every comment became evidence. Every assumption revealed motive. I felt strangely calm, anchored by certainty. This was not humiliation anymore. It was confirmation. I was no longer guessing who they were. They showed me freely. And my boyfriend, silent and approving, showed me who he would always choose to be. That truth settled heavy, undeniable, reshaping my next move. The room felt warmer, tighter, as if walls leaned closer. I noticed small things clearly. The clink of cutlery. The pause before answers. The way power moved unseen. I stayed composed, asking harmless questions, letting them speak. They answered eagerly, unaware of consequences forming. My boyfriend smiled, convinced this night belonged to them. He thought I was absorbing lessons. He did not realize I was choosing distance. I felt the edge approaching, the moment everything would change. Still, I waited. Performance required patience. Control required restraint. I would not rush this. I would not warn them. They had earned their confidence, and confidence makes people careless. I stayed silent, steady, prepared for impact that would follow very soon. His mother leaned back, smiling too sweetly, certain of her authority. She spoke as if offering final guidance, explaining what women like me should value. The sentence crossed a line quietly, but unmistakably. I felt my boyfriend nod beside me. Not subtly. Not accidentally. In agreement. My chest tightened as understanding landed fully. This was not misunderstanding. This was alignment. I kept my face calm, breath even, smile polite. Inside, resolve hardened. If they wanted a performance, I would give them one. If they wanted compliance, I would offer contrast. I decided then to let them believe completely. The reveal would come later. And it would not be gentle. This night had only just begun for them all. I adjusted my smile, softened my tone, and folded my hands like I was bracing against a world too big for me. I leaned into the role so fully, so convincingly, that even I felt the weight of it settle over me like a heavy coat. I told them I'd always felt a little behind, a little unsure. That success was intimidating. That sometimes I didn't know what I wanted, only that I hoped to make it work one day. His mother smiled, wide and satisfied. His father poured me another glass of wine. And my boyfriend, he exhaled, finally relaxing. That was the shift I needed. They believed they had won. I downplayed my degree, called it a small program. I mentioned old jobs, but twisted them into something clumsy. I made my strengths sound like lucky accidents. I pretended to confuse economic terms. And they loved it. The less I seemed to know, the more they talked. They offered guidance, unsolicited stories, cautionary tales. His mother said I was sweet and eager. His father said I was grounded for a girl from humble beginnings. I smiled through it all. The more vulnerable I appeared, the more powerful they felt. His mother shared family traditions like commandments. I nodded at every one. His father went on about legacy, control, and building an empire the right way. My boyfriend smiled proudly beside me, clearly believing he had saved the night. He didn't know he had handed me everything I needed. Because as the wine flowed, so did the cracks. His father, loosened by pride and Pinot Noir, began talking about smart shortcuts. About companies acquired under market value. He described how friends in high places made legal barriers feel optional. I sipped my drink, made wide eyes, and asked, "How does that even work?" He chuckled and leaned in, eager to teach. I stored every word. His mother grew looser too, more candid. She talked about the other women who had sat in my seat, girlfriends who hadn't fit. She spoke about how she'd guided them, nudged them away, molded the ones who stayed. They had potential, like you, she said, placing a hand on mine. But it took work. Patience. Submission. I tilted my head, blinking slowly. Submission? I asked softly. She smiled. To family. To structure. To legacy. I nodded like I understood, like I accepted it. But inside, something cold slid down my spine. I realized they didn't just want to include me. They wanted to own me. My identity. My choices. My voice. And my boyfriend? He stayed silent through it all, only speaking when asked. When his mother mentioned arranging our future apartment to match the family's lifestyle, he nodded. When his father mentioned opening a shared account in his name, just for practice, he agreed without pause. I kept my smile still, but inside, something sharp twisted. I began asking more questions, innocent ones. Curious. Harmless. So how did you handle those other girls? What happens if someone doesn't adjust? What kind of family businesses are you in? Every answer exposed more. They didn't notice. They saw me as manageable now. I kept them talking, let them feel clever. I learned about family trusts, shell companies, and hush-hush settlements. Every time I gave them silence, they filled it with arrogance. Then came the moment that broke the illusion. My boyfriend leaned in and whispered in my ear. Just, don't embarrass me. Okay? I turned and stared at him. Not angry. Not confused. Just, done. He smiled, like it was a joke. You've been doing great. Just don't ruin it. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. Ruin it? He didn't know I'd already watched this entire performance collapse from the inside out. He didn't know I'd taken notes on every step, every confession, every careless reveal. The idea that I might embarrass him, when he had said nothing all night, had defended me not once, was a joke so sharp it nearly bled. I leaned back into my seat and smiled again. Bigger this time. If they wanted me small, I would make myself even smaller. If they needed to feel in control, I'd feed them the illusion until it suffocated them. Because now I finally understood, this wasn't just about class. This was about control. They didn't care that I wasn't from money. They cared that I wasn't dependent. They didn't hate who I was. They hated what I could become without them. That's why I'd stayed quiet for so long. That's why I'd hidden my work, my investments, my name. Because people like this don't try to understand strong women. They try to dismantle them. So I gave them what they expected. I asked his mother how she handled career ambitions in her daughter-in-law. She smiled and said, "They learn. Eventually." I asked his father what he thought of women in finance. He said, "Numbers are masculine by nature." I asked my boyfriend what he thought. He just smiled and said, "You'll be taken care of." Taken care of. Like a pet. A project. A possession. That was when his father leaned forward, swirling the last of his wine, and dropped the sentence that changed everything. He said the name of a company. A small tech firm. He laughed and said, "We scooped that up last year. Brilliant acquisition." Poor girl didn't know how to fight back in court. The air left my lungs for just a second. Because I knew that company. I knew the woman behind it. I knew the settlement she never got, the silence she was forced into, and the clause she never signed. Because she called me first. Because I helped her fight. Because I helped her win. He didn't know my name then. But he was about to. And that was the moment I knew, the reveal was closer than they thought. His father mentions a business that connects directly to my past, and I know the reveal is getting closer. The room had dimmed slightly, as the chandelier above us cast a soft, expensive glow across the table. My boyfriend's father swirled his wine with one hand and casually let a company name slip from his lips, like it was just another trophy on his shelf. But to me, it wasn't. I felt the name hit me like a jolt to the spine. My fingers curled slightly around the base of my glass. I forced my breathing to remain steady, but the calm I had worn so carefully all night nearly cracked. That company wasn't just familiar. It was mine. Not in title anymore. But in blood. In memory. In the years I spent building it from scratch in my apartment, when I couldn't afford heat in winter and worked through nights that bled into mornings. The logo they spoke of so lightly was something I once sketched on a napkin in a library because I couldn't afford proper stationery. And they were talking about it now, like it was theirs. They hadn't bought it. They'd stolen it. Not directly. Not publicly. But they'd helped fund the hostile acquisition that broke me. And I had survived. I sat still, every muscle in my body controlled. I glanced at my boyfriend. He didn't notice anything. He was sipping wine, nodding like his father's every word was scripture. I looked back at his father. He was bragging. Bragging about how the poor girl had tried to fight. About how she didn't know what she was doing. About how one legal oversight had cost her everything. My hands trembled beneath the tablecloth. I wasn't that girl. But I knew her. I helped her when no one else would. She wasn't naive, just outnumbered. And they'd buried her with lawyers and money. The worst part? They thought no one had noticed. No one had cared. But I had. I took a slow breath. And then, I asked the question that would change everything. "Oh, really? That company, what did you say the name was again?" He glanced at me, almost dismissively. "Epexon Systems. You wouldn't know it. It's small, tech, enterprise back-end stuff." I tilted my head. "That's interesting. Sounds like something I've come across." His mother smiled at me, patronizing. "I doubt it, dear. It's very technical. Finance heavy. Definitely not your world." I smiled back, sharp and sweet. "Oh, of course. Just curious." That's all it took. Their arrogance confirmed everything. They had no idea who they were talking to. Or what I knew. But my boyfriend, he noticed. For the first time that night, he looked at me, really looked. His brow furrowed. His hand twitched. He leaned in slightly, as if sensing something had changed, but too late. The shift in me was already irreversible. My voice stayed gentle, my posture composed, but something in me had gone still. He saw it. I could tell. And for the first time since I entered this house, I watched uncertainty flicker across his face. He was starting to suspect I wasn't who he thought. Good. I needed a moment. Not to escape. To ground. I excused myself politely and stepped into the hall, heels clicking against the marble. The bathroom was silent and gold-trimmed, and I locked the door behind me like I was shutting out a version of myself I no longer needed. I stared at the mirror. The girl reflected back looked calm. But I saw the fire behind her eyes. The past few years flashed across my mind, contracts signed under pressure, nights crying on the phone with lawyers, betrayal from colleagues I thought were friends. And finally, the day I walked away from that company, bruised but not broken. They thought they'd buried me. But I became someone else instead. I changed my name. I changed my network. I rebuilt quietly, behind the scenes. I helped other women who were silenced. I never spoke about it publicly, not because I was ashamed, but because I was waiting. For the right moment. For the right audience. And now. I had it. I straightened my back. Smoothed my dress. Took one last breath. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity. They needed to see who they had dismissed. They needed to feel the weight of every assumption. Every condescending word. Every smirk. Because I wasn't small. And I had never needed saving. When I returned to the dining room, the air shifted again. My boyfriend's eyes followed me. I saw the question lingering in his face, what changed? What did I hear? But I didn't answer with words. Not yet. I sat down slowly, carefully placing my napkin back across my lap like I was picking up a conversation I had every intention of finishing. And I was. Because the next question I asked would unravel everything they thought they knew. And this time I wouldn't be soft. I decide the next question I ask will change the entire night. I sat down at the table with the same polite smile I'd worn all evening. But inside, the mask had slipped. I no longer needed it. His father was still chuckling about the acquisition, drumming his fingers along the base of his wine glass like a man pleased with himself. His mother was swirling her drink, eyes half-lidded with superiority. My boyfriend glanced between them and me, still unaware that the ground beneath us had shifted. I took a slow sip of water, then set my glass down carefully. Then I spoke. You mentioned Apex and Systems, I said casually. You said the acquisition happened last year, correct? His father looked up, mildly surprised that I was still on the topic. Yes. Smart deal. The girl who founded it, young, idealistic, no legal backbone. She couldn't hold up in court. His mother let out a short laugh. She should have walked away. Some people aren't meant to play in the deep end. I smiled. Just a little. She didn't walk away, I said, because she didn't have to. The table went still. I let the silence stretch for just a moment, watching them process the unfamiliar weight in my voice. My boyfriend sat straighter, brows knitting together. I'm sorry, his father asked. I tilted my head. Your records are off. She didn't lose. The case never went to trial. The terms of the settlement were sealed, but let's just say she left with more than you think. His father's eyes narrowed. How would you know that? That was it. The first crack. The first hint of panic. I looked straight at him. Because I advised her legal team. His mother's glass froze midair. My boyfriend slowly turned to me, lips slightly parted. What? He whispered. I didn't look at him. I wasn't done. I was part of the strategy team that built the defense. I helped structure the countersuit that forced your partners to settle. You remember when that mysterious injunction delayed the merger for 6 weeks? I nodded slightly. That was me. Now the room was silent. No laughter. No smugness. Only the sound of a chandelier humming faintly above us. I let it all sit there. My boyfriend stared like he was seeing me for the first time. I finally turned to him. You asked me once why I don't talk about work. This is why. His father recovered first. Wait a second, he said, voice sharp. You're saying you're a lawyer? I laughed, just a breath. No. Not officially. I'm an analyst. Consultant. Founder. His mother blinked. Founder of what? I leaned back. Several things. Some public, some not. I build for women who don't get second chances. The kind of women you steamroll in boardrooms. Or think you do. Their faces shifted in waves. Denial. Confusion. And then the worst one, recognition. They were beginning to believe me. My boyfriend's voice came, low and shaken. You kept this from me? Finally, I looked at him fully. Yes, I said. He blinked. Why? Because I needed to know if you loved me for who I am, or for how well I played powerless. The words hung between us, heavier than anything that had come before. His mother opened her mouth, but nothing came out. His father's hands were now gripping the edge of the table. They were calculating. Reassessing. Trying to fit me into a new category that made sense. Too late. They had made their opinions clear. They had chosen who I was to them. And now, they didn't know what to do. His father finally cleared his throat. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I raised a hand. Don't. You had your chance to see me. You chose to see what you wanted. I just let you. My boyfriend reached for me. Wait, just, hold on. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? His voice was trembling. I studied him. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel nervous. Or small. I felt sure. Because the version of me you loved, I said, wasn't real. His face fell. And for a split second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the look in his eyes earlier, when his mother called me a supporter, not a leader. And he agreed. Now the power in the room had shifted. And they all knew it. My boyfriend realizes I kept this from him, and his reaction isn't what I expected. You lied to me, he said, voice louder than it had been all evening. His mother flinched. His father raised an eyebrow. The polished calm of the dining room cracked under the heat of his accusation. I didn't flinch. I didn't lie, I said quietly. I protected what was mine. He stood from his chair, gesturing toward me like I was suddenly unrecognizable. You let me believe you were struggling. That you needed help. God, you let me defend you when I didn't even know what I was defending. I stayed seated. Still. Composed. You weren't defending me, I said. You were managing me. He stared like he didn't understand. But I saw the truth bloom behind his eyes. He understood. He just didn't like it. You manipulated this entire dinner, he snapped. No, I said, finally standing. Your family did that. I just stopped playing along. His mother rose next, her voice a practiced kind of calm. All right, everyone take a breath. No, I cut in, turning to her. You don't get to mediate now. Her eyes widened. You spent the evening dressing condescension as guidance. You called it tradition. You called it legacy. But it was control. I turned to my boyfriend. And you let it happen. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak yet. You sat there, let them diminish me, twist who I was. And when I pushed back, you squeezed my knee like I was embarrassing you. Do you want to talk about manipulation? Let's talk about how small you needed me to stay. His face flushed red. That's not true. I softened my voice. Isn't it? He glanced at his parents. I didn't know you were this capable? I offered. He didn't answer. That was the answer. His mother stepped closer. I didn't know who you were. None of us did. That's not fair. It's not about fairness, I said. It's about assumption. You didn't ask. You just decided. His father cleared his throat, trying to steady the moment. Look, he said, what's done is done. You're clearly intelligent. Strategic. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot, but we know how to move forward with people like you. I blinked. People like me? He smiled, confident again. Join us. Apexon's folded into our holdings now, but you've proven yourself useful. Let's talk partnerships. My stomach turned. I laughed once, low and humorless. That's the problem, I said. You still think this is about business. About power. You don't understand that I never needed your approval. I came here to understand what I was stepping into. And now that you know, his father asked. I'm stepping out. My boyfriend's voice cracked. You're leaving? I'm choosing myself. He shook his head. You don't even want to talk about it? I'm talking, I said, turning fully toward him. I'm telling you now, I won't shrink to make you comfortable. I won't silence myself to match your expectations. And I won't stay where I'm only valued when I'm underestimated. He stepped forward. But I love you. No, I said gently. You loved the version of me who let you lead without question. Who played the role you needed in front of him. His mother lowered her eyes. His father sat back in silence. I want a partner, I continued. Not a witness. My boyfriend's voice fell. You made me feel small tonight. I met his gaze. Welcome to my world. He stared at me, breathing uneven. Then, without thinking, he blurted, then prove you didn't come here to trap me. My pulse stilled. Excuse me? Sign something, he said. A document. That you won't try to take anything. That this wasn't some kind of setup. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. His mother didn't speak. His father closed his eyes. And I stood perfectly still, letting the pain of that sentence pass through me. All this time, all that I'd held back, all the pieces of myself I'd hidden to avoid exactly this moment, and here it was anyway. He thought I'd come here with a motive. He thought I was a threat to be neutralized. I took a deep breath. And I knew, without a single doubt, what I would do next. As I prepare to leave, my boyfriend makes one last demand that forces my final decision. I stood there, staring at the man I once imagined a future with, and felt, still. Not angry. Not broken. Just done. His words, prove you didn't come here to trap me, still echoed like a bad joke no one dared laugh at. His parents sat in rigid silence behind him. His mother's hands were clasped on the table now, her wine untouched. His father leaned back in his chair, mask cracking slowly. I took one breath. And then another. And when I spoke, it wasn't a defense. It was a decision. No, I said simply. I'm not signing anything. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Then what am I supposed to think? I gave him my truth. The one I'd swallowed all evening to protect his ego. You're supposed to think, I said, about why the first time you saw the full version of me, your instinct was to control it. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. You asked me to make myself small so you could stay comfortable. You let your parents speak to me like I was an accessory you hadn't even paid for yet. You sat there, silent, while they dissected my worth like I wasn't even in the room. I didn't know, he said weakly. I nodded. That's the problem. You didn't know. You didn't want to know. And now that you do, you feel betrayed not because I lied, but because I refused to play the part you picked for me. His mother shifted, trying to recover ground. This is all happening so fast. Maybe we just need. I turned to her. Calm. Controlled. No. What I needed was respect. Not a timeline. Her mouth clamped shut. I could see the shift now. They were scrambling, but not for me, for control. They had underestimated me so deeply, so completely, that they didn't know how to adjust now that I was standing. Listen, his father began, there's still potential here. We might have misjudged you, but let's not throw away something mutually beneficial. I laughed then. Softly. Sadly. You still think this is about power? He said nothing. My boyfriend stepped closer. You're blowing this up for no reason. That was the last lie I allowed. No, I said. This, what's happening right now, is the first honest moment we've ever had. He stopped moving. The air between us tightened. I know who I am, I continued. I know what I built. What I've survived. I didn't walk into this house looking for a fight. I came looking for a future. And now you're leaving? He whispered. Yes. But we can work through this. I shook my head. I won't apologize for being whole. I won't fight to prove I deserve basic respect. And I won't marry into a family that only values women they can control. His mother's eyes were wet now. Please. Don't leave like this. How should I leave? I asked softly. Quietly? Grateful? Shrinking myself one last time so you all feel better? She looked away. My boyfriend's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to losing. Especially not like this. He took one final step toward me. You walk out that door, he said, voice low, don't expect to come back. It was meant to threaten me. It freed me instead. Good, I replied. I turned slowly, walking past the dining table that had once felt like a throne room and now looked more like a courtroom, one where the verdict had already been delivered. I didn't grab my coat. I didn't ask for a ride. I walked out with nothing but the truth wrapped around me like armor. The night air hit my skin like a baptism. Clean. Sharp. Honest. I paused on the steps, breathing it in. I wasn't victorious. This wasn't a win. It was a release. I had spent years learning how to make myself less threatening. How to speak softer, smile smaller, make my success sound like a lucky break. I learned how to protect men from my ambition. How to fit into their boxes. How to seem easy to love. And tonight, I had burned all of that to the ground. I reached the end of the driveway and kept walking. My phone buzzed in my purse. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. The story was over. But I wasn't. I called a car, and as I sat inside, my reflection caught in the window. For the first time in years, I didn't recognize the girl staring back at me. Because she wasn't a girl anymore. She was a woman who had learned that shrinking was a survival skill, but not a life strategy. That woman didn't need saving. She needed space. And I was done asking for it. The car turned down the road, the mansion vanishing behind trees and gates and the weight of all the things I refused to carry home with me. As we drove deeper into the night, I didn't feel regret. I felt something else. Readiness. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Of a life where I would never shrink again. I know this isn't the end, it's the beginning of a life where I never shrink again. Walking away cost me more than I expected. There were days after that dinner when I questioned everything, my silence, my reveal, my timing. There were moments when the memory of him, his voice, his hands, the way he used to say my name, haunted me in the quiet. Because love, even when built on the wrong foundation, still leaves behind a shape when it collapses. But then came the peace. Not all at once, but in layers. In the mornings when I woke up and didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. In the moments when I looked in the mirror and didn't shrink from the woman staring back. I had chosen truth over comfort. Integrity over belonging. And slowly, that truth set me free. They tried to put me in a box. Tried to measure me by their standards. Tried to reduce me into something easier to understand, easier to control. But when I stood up from that dinner table and chose myself, I took back every piece of power I'd ever given away for the sake of approval. They faced the consequences of their assumptions. Not with vengeance, but with absence. With the reality that they could no longer use me to polish their image or inflate their pride. He called. Texted. Apologized. But apologies mean nothing when they're built on the hope that you'll go back to pretending. I didn't. I started building again. Quietly. Purposefully. Not to prove anything, but to continue living fully, truthfully, and without permission. Because healing doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it's walking away with your dignity intact while they sit in the silence they created. I learned the most important lesson of all. Never tie your worth to someone else's ability to see it. My power was never in what they thought of me. It was in what I chose to believe about myself. And I believe now, deeply, permanently, that I am not too much. I was simply never meant to be less. So this isn't a sad ending. It's the most honest one I could have written. And it's the beginning of a life where I never shrink again. Not for a man. Not for a family. Not for anyone.